Hi, and welcome to the Bronco Exchange. I'm your host, Dr. Shanessa Fenner, along with Jaylen Thames, who's a senior at FSU this year. And today we're doing part 2 with our wonderful Chancellor, Dr. James Anderson. Hi, Dr. Anderson again.
How are you? Again, it's a pleasure to be with you.
It's a pleasure to be with you as well. Now, Chancellor, I know with your job, you've got a lot of duties, a lot of responsibilities. What has been some of your major challenges as a Chancellor?
Well, the first challenge that I took on when I came, and it was because we are a business, was we had to get our financial house in order as a university. It was in disarray. And we were running deficits in certain areas. And I'll give you a really good example of how that hurt students like you, Jaylen, directly. I met with the band students, and they wanted more scholarship money when I first got here. And I looked at their budget, and I saw there was no money. So these students actually didn't have scholarships. They had been given virtual scholarships. They were just told they had scholarships. And so when I met with them, I told them what the state of affairs was, and I said, next year, you got to pay tuition, because you don't have a scholarship. Now, that was immoral for people that preceded me. That was immoral for them to do, to tell a student and a parent that you have a scholarship and you really didn't, okay? So something like that leads to a deficit, all right? You're running we were running as a university a $6 million deficit in scholarships. $6 million had been promised to students, was on the books, and there was no money, okay? So that was an initial challenge, and that's one every year that you have to address, is that you have to make sure that the budget is stable because you're audited by the state. Now, we've had 4 consecutive years of clean audits, no problems, nothing. We're really healthy financially, and that's the way I want it to stay. But that's always one of your biggest challenges, is maintaining the financial health of the university.
What about staff relationships? How do you build, the morale and all at a university?
One of the ways you build morale is to make sure that people feel that what work they do is valued, okay? That they're a vital part of the life of this university, the legacy of the university, etc. A big difference between me and some of the previous leaders that have been here is I take the time to speak to everyone. I don't care what level you are when you work here. I stand and talk to you. Me and the guys that do the groundskeeping sit and talk about the football game last Sunday, and we'll do this and we'll do that. And in fact, I hosted a dinner at my house recently for housekeepers, groundskeepers, facility people, people who never get acknowledged or never get any attention. I wanted to show them how much we appreciated them. And so I had them all over to the house, and we had a great time.
Oh. Well, as a student, I'd like to ask you, what is your most precious memory as a chancellor? What interaction with the student, what particular interaction with the student has built your character?
I'm gonna give an example of a student who was in trouble and who reinvented himself. So there was a student, and he was always fighting, okay? And he got in a fight in front of the cafeteria a few years ago, and it went viral. But more importantly, I called him in, and I said, man, what are you doing? I said, now you're gonna get kicked out of school for a year, okay? That's always gonna be on your transcript. When you get kicked out of school, that's on your transcript, okay? And I said, you're building a reputation. Nobody's gonna write a letter of reference for you. I said, you got tremendous promise. I said, you and I sit and talk, and I said, I can tell from just our conversations that you have tremendous promise. I said, why don't you take this year and get your act together? Well, about a year later, he came to my office. I cut all his dreads off, I shaved his beard off, was clean looking. He said, Chance, I'm gonna change my life. Well, that guy has since changed his life. He's graduated, he's got a job now, he's got a young family now. I mean, that's one of my proudest achievements, that I had something to do with that young man reinventing himself. And a lot of students need to kind of think that way, that I need to think about 10 years from now, what do I need to do to reinvent myself to be ready 10 years from now? Or in your case, I don't know what it is you ultimately want to do, but if you told me, I could probably start telling you some things to say, okay, here's 3 or 4 things you need to think about to be that person you want to be 10 years from now.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, let's say that I have an aspiration to be a chancellor, okay? What would you tell me? What kind of advice would you give me?
Don't do it. Don't do it.
Okay.
I'm not joking. If you want to be a chancellor or a college president, understand you're trading your public life, your private life for a public life, okay? When I first took this job and I came, I was in Walgreens one night about midnight. There's a 24-hour Walgreens. And I was there about midnight. I had shorts on, had my baseball hat on backwards, etc., sneaks on. And I walked in and somebody said, "Chancellor, how you doing?" And as soon as they said it, they put their phone camera up, okay? See, when phone cameras are everywhere, you're a public figure. Any time of day, anywhere you are, etc. And it made me realize that, wow, I don't have a private life anymore. So that's one thing I say to people. The other side of it, though, is as a president or a chancellor, you really have the power to change the culture of a university. You really have the power to make sure that a lot more students can get on that success pathway and that success track. Just think about the $25 million campaign, okay? Look at all that scholarship money that we're gonna have now to help students come here, get through, graduate, and do something productive. And I look at a lot of the other historically black college universities that aren't running campaigns. I don't know why they're not. I don't know why they're not. As tough as it is to get money now, it would seem to me that more historically black colleges, universities should be doing capital campaigns, but they're not.
Oh, well, speaking of change, it seems like ever since you've been here, the cultural, efficacy of Fayetteville has improved. We got the study abroad program, we got the Black Feminist Scholar. So can you just take us to go through the steps of what you did in order to implement these programs?
Well, when you first come, like I said, first year or two, you have to take care of problems first. For example, our nursing program was in dire need of alteration. I closed the program down, got rid of the faculty, got rid of the chair, started anew. Went out and scoured the country and found the best chair of nursing I could find, and I found her. And it's taken off and been successful. It's number 2, on the East Coast and the Southeast. So you take care of your problems first. Then one of my next goals was to build the academic reputation of the university. Outside of Fayetteville, people never really talked about FSU at that time. And I'm pretty tuned into the national landscape of what's going on and who's talking about what. FSU never came up, okay? And people were okay with that here. And I said, no, you can't be okay with that. I said, you have to build your reputation. And building a reputation means bringing programs here that weren't here, getting students to do more internships, getting students out there globally to travel more. I'm waiting for my guy, Chris Darden. Chris Darden, one of my favorite students. Chris was a business major. I said, Chris, you need to go to University of Shanghai in China and get your MBA. He could have stayed here and gotten it. Difference between an MBA in China and here is most MBAs at any university in the US, you can get those 36 hours, you can do it in a year and a summer. In China, it's 4 years. Why? The first 2 years in China is intensive language instruction. You don't even take business courses. You learn Chinese until you're fluent. Your next 2 years then are you. So guess what? When Chris finishes up and comes back, Chris will have an MBA from the University of Shanghai. That guy will be fluent in Chinese. He could get a job anywhere in the world and write his ticket, okay? That's what I want, to produce the kinds of programs and activities that service a Chris Darden, any student like that.
So Chancellor, what kind of legacy would you like to leave behind?
Well, I always answer that question this way. First of all, it's not about my legacy. It's only about the university's legacy, okay? Nobody talks about what some chancellor did 20 years ago today, because actually it doesn't matter that much, okay? What matters is from 20 years ago to today, the university has advanced its legacy. So I got a pretty good ego. I'm happy with myself, all right? I don't need to have, quote, a personal legacy, because there have been people who wanted to put my names on buildings that we built here. I said, no way. I said, let's get a donor to give us $1 million to put their name on the building. I don't need to see my name on the building. I don't need ego food. So it's not about my legacy. It's only about the university's legacy. And I'm just an instrument to help embellish that.
Okay, great answer.
Can you please discuss the importance of passion when teaching? Because I've talked to alumni, and they just said that although they didn't have the resources they did now, like the school, like the teachers were passionate. They loved the students, they loved being there, and despite it, everything they liked.
I will agree to that. I will agree in the early years, and not even just in the early years, I mean up probably to the 70s and 80s, teachers, a lot of the faculty were more invested in teaching students. They were more invested in making sure that they establish a personal relationship with the student. They were more invested in wanting the student to feel supported. And around the country in the last 10, 20, 30 years, that hasn't happened. Okay, there's been a loss. So, I mean, what would it take, for example, for you to feel that a faculty member really cared about you? What would you want to see that faculty member do?
Just telling me, hey, how you doing? That lets them know they automatically care about me as a person.
Just speaking to you and getting to know you.
Communication.
Yeah, asking you about yourself as a person. Okay. Now, one of the issues is classes get larger. So you go from having 20 people in your class to 40 people to 75 people. I mean, I taught a class once. I'm a psychology professor, and at one university, when I was working at North Carolina State University, I taught a class, and I had 200 people in a class. You're not going to get to know 200 people personally. I was just managing this class for 200 people, and that made it difficult. So that's why more and more universities go to smaller classes now. But at the minimum, we should be able to get to know you, to talk to you, to see what you think about how the class is going. You know, when I teach, at the end of every class, I say 10 minutes. And I said, okay, what y'all think about today? Okay, did I do okay? Did you learn what you expected to learn? Do you have any questions? There's something I need to cover when we start the next class that is a little fuzzy right now. So I always save time at the end of class to kind of feel them out and make them, you know, and they might be a little hesitant the first couple classes. After that, they just, they come out, snowballs. They tell you everything.
And Jaylen, that's a great question, because I tell my teachers all the time about the importance of forming relationships with the students. Because if you're my student and I'm your teacher and we have a wonderful relationship, there's nothing that you won't do. You'll make those A's and B's, and you pay more attention to me whenever I'm teaching, and you just go beyond the call of duty. So yes, forming those relationships are very important.
Mm-hmm. You asked me earlier a question about challenges. One of the challenges for me, and I can tell when students ask me questions sometimes, is they don't really understand I'm running a business here. They don't understand I have to be away a lot to raise money, okay? So I'm in Washington all of next week, and I'm meeting with 4 or 5 different groups next week to try to get more money for the university, more money for students, more money for this and that. And they might say, well, you didn't come to our event last week. Okay, man, it comes down to coming to your event for 30 minutes or coming down to raising $400,000. I'm gonna be here with this $400,000, okay? So students need to really understand more what a chancellor or president's role is, that they can't really be an on-campus president as much as the students might want, because you have so many other roles to fulfill.
Now, what kind of advice, Chancellor, would you give your 18-year-old self today?
My 18-year-old self, I probably have gotten into technology more than I have. I've gotten into technology as a result of the need of whatever position I had. But I would have probably invested more in terms of technology so that I would have found a team of people like-minded like me, and we would have developed our own apps, or we would have developed our own platforms, you know, that we could market, etc. Because there's such a value to technology. I was looking at the catastrophes because of the hurricanes in the Virgin Islands. And I know the president of the University of Virgin Islands very well. I've been telling that guy for years, you gotta get into distance education. You gotta get into distance education. I even said to him once, suppose y'all have a major hurricane and all your buildings are destroyed. Students can't then go to class in your buildings. If he had distance ed, and if he had a relationship with us, let's say, then the students could still be taking their courses. So technology is so valuable. In fact, I'll let you all know that I'm also gonna call him and say, look, if any of your students are seniors and need to graduate, they can take a distance ed course with us for free if it helps them graduate. So I'm going to make that offer to him.
Okay. Well, this wraps up part 2 of the Bronco Exchange. I'm your host, Dr. Shanessa Fenner, along with Jaylen Thames and the infamous Dr. James Anderson. Thank you, and have a great evening.
Hypnotized, familiar stranger, wait, hold up, don't run, I don't